Hi, this is Shem from Garfield Games in New Zealand, and I have the privilege of answering a few questions for you guys. So I've actually got this game set up here for a solo mode that I just filmed, which is going to go on YouTube very soon. But Fabio from Mosaico has just asked me to quickly give some answers to some cool questions. So firstly, how did the idea for this expansion come to be? I think with Architects being quite a sandboxy kind of game, we always knew we wanted to expand on it. We had the obvious thing of making a sixth player because we had actually tested it with 6 players originally and we knew that it worked really well. So Age of Artisans added that 6th player. And while we were actually working on Age of Artisans, we had this idea for these kind of new public buildings that people could compete for. These wonders, I think they were calling them, and even in that version they were called wonders. And at that point they were these little tiles that sat here where you would put your worker on, kind of like the guild hall, and they required a lot of the same skill, like 3 woodcutters or 3 stonemasons, that kind of thing. But as we were working on that within Age of Artisans, we kind of felt like it was a bit tacked on, it didn't really belong with the other elements of that expansion, so we ended up taking it out because it didn't fit. And when we thought about doing a second expansion, we still had this idea of wonders, and Sam McDonald had the idea of maybe there's a sideboard that brings in a few more apprentices. You can see how there's 5 now, 10 rather than 8, and maybe there's a track that can run up the side, some kind of track. Don't know what it does, but maybe we can like use it for resources, or maybe it's a area control thing or something like that. So that's where the original ideas came from. And then with the wonders, we thought, what if there were these cool, big, chunky kind of buildings you can put down the board, and maybe they do something that they change up how the spaces work. And that's kind of what we ended up running with. So they, to kind of explain the biggest changes, I guess, that you'll see in Works of Wonder, are the wonders. So they're these new cards that sit up the top. I'm actually showing the playmat here, but these would sit up off the side of the board or up the top of the playmat. And they're public buildings that players can compete for. Let's get that in a shot. So this would cost 14 stone, 5 influence, which is the new track, and 3 tax to be paid. It's going to give you 2 influence, 2 virtue, sorry, straight away, and it's going to be worth 11 points. At the bottom here it says that when you place that wonder out onto the board, it's going to act like an additional worker, or it's going to let you gain an influence at that location. So this one's been placed over at the town centre. So when that player goes there, they basically treat it like an extra worker, or they gain an influence for going there. So that's pretty cool. The influence itself that you gain influence by, there's these 2 new workers on the board, the princess and the profiteer. The princess, when you go to her, you're able to contribute to these wonders. So you give up resources to gain influence, sometimes virtue or reward cards as well. The profiteer, however, when you go to him, you simply just gain an influence. But there are bad things that happen during the black market reset that if you have workers out there, you might get rewarded or punished. At the princess, you actually get rewarded. If you have the most workers, you gain this little bonus. Whereas at the profiteer's location during the reset, if all players who have workers there gain something, then all the workers there go to prison. So they act kind of like little mini black markets in a way. So yeah. There's lots more building cards, a lot more apprentices, and we've got more reward cards, that kind of stuff. So it adds a lot. 6 new player boards, and also 6 unique AIs that you can compete against. So there's a lot in the box. That's good. So the next question would be, how important do I think this is to the game? Does it just expand it, or does it bring something new? I think it kind of does both. It doesn't add too many extra rules. So it's not something that's going to weigh down the game. It doesn't take away from the game. It still feels like Architects, which is what you want in an expansion, I believe. But it adds new ways to do the same thing. So the influence track is kind of interesting. If you have the most influence at the end of the game, you gain 4 gold. However, you can use it in the game. So rather than losing a virtue, you could lose 2 influence, or rather than paying 2 coins, you could lose 2 influence, or you can lose 4 influence to avoid paying for a gold or a marble, and you can do that multiple times. So you could essentially build the first level of the cathedral with a building card and 4 influence rather than the gold. and you can use the silver, which I should have done in my playthrough, I'm just realising now, you can use the silver to pay for debt flips and things like that. So it's very interesting. It makes a lot more choices. You can go to the black market essentially for free by using influence, things like that. So it really makes the board a lot more dynamic with these two characters moving around, with the wonders being placed and stuff like that. The next question. Also, basically about the solo mode. So the solo mode does completely change from Architects. So we've got a whole new deck of scheme cards. They have a similar kind of mechanically, the way they work is that you turn over a card and you place a worker. But these ones have a lot more kind of if statements. So that's things like saying, if this is true, do this, otherwise do that, which makes the AI a lot smarter. So rather than just capturing when it probably shouldn't or delivering when it probably shouldn't, it's going to do things that benefit it more each turn. So it feels far more competitive and far more intelligent. And the other cool thing is how the new AIs work. So if you've played Paladins solo, you'll know how that kind of resource track works in that one. This basically, every time it gains coins from stealing the tax or putting your workers in prison, it's going to move this little resource marker each space for each silver. If it wraps around, then it gains a marble, which is points and helps it build the wonders, which are lots of points. But this also tells it when it wants to remove apprentices, which column it's going to target. It's going to tell them which contribution it wants to make to these contribution cards, and which wonder it wants to build. Also, if you play with Age of Artisans, which this works fine with as well, it's going to tell you which craft card it wants to take for the adornment down the bottom here. So yeah, very competitive and very different. So the 6 unique ones, this is the peddler I just played with. The peddler basically generates a lot of marble, so it's going to build a lot of wonders. There's other ones. Here we have the patron, which is all about kind of more similar to the original AI. It's going to really boost that virtue track a lot by going to the King's Storehouse. We've got the black market illusionist, who's going to use the black market a lot, get a lot of marble that way. We've got one that captures you and puts you in prison a lot. So yeah, it feels very different. It's fun playing kind of both. Different character versus different AI and seeing different experiences at the table. And lastly, the last question would be, are there more expansions coming? So for Architects and for Paladins, I think we're probably done with expansions. We don't want to bloat the games too much, just make them as good as we can. But we do have 2 expansions in the works for Viscounts, and they should be on Kickstarter probably early next year, and coming to retail towards the end of 2022. But they add lots of cool stuff. Don't add too much to the game, but just give you far more options, more tension, more agency, and that kind of stuff that we like to add into games. So yeah, look out for those. And thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. Appreciate you guys so much. Bye bye.